Go. Awesome. Good evening, everyone. So nice to see my fellow commission members in person and live here today. I'm going to call to order our regular meeting of the Town Planning and Zoning Commission. It is Monday, May 2nd at 6:37 p.m. So welcome, everyone. My name is Rob Klee. I'm the chair of our Woodbridge Town Planning and Zoning Commission. With us here tonight, we have, I'll start over here, Yoni Zamir. We have Kathy Hunter. We have Andrew Skolnick, Jeff Kennedy, Larry Greenberg, and Susan Cassidy. Paul Schatz could not be here today. Is that our full contingent, almost, except for? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chris Sullivan, who is supporting us today, who is our town land use analyst and zoning enforcement officer. Our agenda tonight is available on the town website, so hopefully folks have seen it. I don't know if we also have hard copies or no. There are a few around. So on today's agenda, we have a public hearing, a proposal from our Woodbridge Agricultural Commission to amend our zoning regulations regarding offering items for sale at roadside farm stands. And then we have a couple of items of new business, a section 8-24 referral regarding a water line at the Fitzgerald property to the dog park. And Chris, I was a little unclear. Did we also have something about a solar tracker? Is that on?
Yes.
Okay, that is on the agenda, a flood hazard permit application for a solar tracker at 283 Seymour Road. Then we'll have our work session where we're going to discuss and vote on the Agricultural Commission's request. Then we're going to talk about our engagement with Mr. Glenn Shalder, who I see is here. Good to see you again, about the cleanup of our regulations. We'll talk a little bit about marijuana dealers and our proposed public forum scheduled for May 10th, I believe. Okay. And then our report from the South Central Regional Council of Governments, report of the zoning officer, and a whole lot of minutes to approve. All righty. Did I miss anything, Chris?
No, I think you got it all.
Terrific. So great to see members of the public here in person as well today. Another treat. So why don't we get started with our public hearing first from the Agricultural Commission. Is there someone who's going to be presenting? Wonderful. Come on up and introduce yourself to the commission and state your name. And Chris, anything else? We haven't done this live in person in a while, so.
We should just note that we did refer this to the Council of Governments, and we did receive a report back from them, which you all had in your packet, and so there wasn't any issue with it in terms of what they review.
Terrific. Thanks, Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Sorensen, Chairman of the Agricultural Committee.
Hi, Chris.
I live at 410 Amity Road, Woodbridge, Connecticut. I have members here tonight. I got Andrea Urbano, Leland Torrance, Steve Massaro, and Chris. I got everybody, no, they call him Steve. But anyways, we got most of our committee here tonight. And what we're looking for is to, as they said here in the new business, we're looking to put other products in our farm markets and everything else that are within the state of Connecticut here, whether it be honey or maple syrup or whatever it is. And most of the other farm stands in the other districts like Bethany, Seymour, Shelton, and all that have that, that they're able to do. And that's what we're just looking to do, is be able to add stuff to our product line. And we felt that, if it came from the state and we could supply it to the general public, we thought that would be an advantageous for us as well as the consumers. And so we needed to change the wording in the, I guess, the regulations for the town in order to be able to do this.
Terrific. Thank you, Chris. And specifically, the wording change, and if you don't mind, I'll sort of read it in. This is about, it's a change to both Table 3.1, allowed uses by zone, and our section 3.3.A.2 regarding roadside stands. And it is to amend it where it currently states at roadside stands for selling products only of the farm or orchard on which the stand is located, to now state in the proposed amendment for selling both products produced on the farm or orchard on which the stand is located, as well as items not produced on said farm or orchard. So that's that minor change that allows you to basically expand what you're capable of selling at your stands,
Yes.
correct? Great.
You good with that, Steve?
That's correct, yes. Terrific. Any questions of the applicant at the moment? Actually, remind me again procedurally, just to make sure that's okay to have questions of the applicant now?
Yeah, no, I mean,
Good.
once they've done their presentation, then you get to ask questions,
And then we'll do the public
and
comment
then
as
the
well.
public. Yep.
So questions of the applicant from our commission? I'm looking around to see questions. I'm not seeing any. You did mention that our other neighboring towns already have similar
Yes.
wording in their
Yes.
statutes.
And this is what they're doing now. They've already, a good example would be Clover Nook Farms up in Bethany is doing this. And, you have a lot of all the other farms that are doing this. And I think since COVID has come in and really changed the way people shop, people do things, it gives people better access for more products going with, not within a big group of people. They can be, smaller setting. So, and it's, we've had to work hard just like everyone else and make it work, and we try hard. So this is just, we thought it would work well for the people as well as, for us as well.
Terrific. Any other questions from our commission members? I'm not seeing any, so thank you very much for that presentation. I'm happy to now open it up to public comment. If there's any members of the public, we are more than welcome to come on up to have 3 minutes to make a presentation.
Sure.
Seeing no public comment? Oh, sorry, Chris, do you have a question?
Just my name. Okay.
Yeah. Going once, going twice? No? Well, thank you. It is a common sense application, which we will be discussing very shortly when we move into our work session, but I do appreciate you and your folks coming in. You should feel free to stick around. Actually, is that what we go to right next, Chris, or no? Oh, we have new business. So if you want to stick around, you're happy to stick around. We will deliberate shortly and get you an answer tonight. Yes.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded to close the formal hearing. Thank you, Chris. Alrighty, so our next item of new business is our 8-24 referral regarding the Fitzgerald property at 100 Center Road and an application or a proposal to install a water line from Beecher Road to the dog park on the Fitzgerald property. Is there someone here from the town who's going to be presenting? Thank you.
From the dog park.
Oh, from the dog park, yes. Please, come on up and introduce yourself. Wait, presenting is a more formal word than, we just welcome your explaining to us the proposal and what's going to happen.
Sure. My name is Mary Beth Wilmer, and I'm the president of the Dog Park Cooperative. Jeanette Glicksman, who's also on our board, was out of town, so asked me to appear. I hope you all have the information. We received approval from the Board of Selectmen at their last meeting pending this 824 review. We were approached, some of it is that we were approached by a member of the dog park who, Kurt Sampar, who actually works for the Regional Water Authority. They have a program where at little or no cost, they do good works and they will install water lines. They've done it at other area dog parks. basically the dog park pays a minimal amount of the installation, and then we're responsible for paying for the water. As you all know, there is no potable water at Fitzgerald. So this would be a first, and the hydrant would be located outside of the dog park so that anybody who was walking the trails, anybody who was at Fitzgerald, would be able to come and fill a water bottle and carry on their way, as well as providing much needed water for the dogs and folks who frequent the dog park. So that is about the sum of it. If you have any questions.
That's a terrific summary, thank you. Any questions from commission members?
Would this work be done this calendar year?
We hope so. Yeah, yes, it should be done actually fairly quickly. I mean, they were ready to go, and we said, hey, we need to run it through town government, but they're,
Okay,
they
thank
will
you.
put it on the schedule as soon as we tell them to.
And I think I saw from the submission that this is only for the spring through fall. This would not have water during the, it would be winterized.
Exactly. Exactly. They don't want any danger of the line freezing. And so this would be a seasonal water supply, which makes sense.
And the sort of seasonal turning it on and turning it off, is that the town's responsibility or the?
No, the regional water authority would. They would just let us know when we would actually be able to. There's a lock on the hydrant, so number one, we can lock it. But then, similar to other dog parks, just at a certain time of the year, boom, all of a sudden the water is available. I know, it sounds like magic, right?
And it would be located like physically right outside the entrance of the actual fencing part?
So if you've ever been to the dog park, there's
Yeah.
a kiosk,
Yeah.
that is outside the entrance to the dog park, and it would be adjacent to that.
Cool. And has anybody, to your knowledge, I mean, I assume that the, like the Conservation Commission and folks like that, you know, have all given their sort of thumbs up to this, or you know, to the extent that anybody needs to give approval or weigh in?
As far as we understand, we got approval from the Board of Selectmen, and their only contingency was coming
Sure.
to you all for the 824.
Any other expressions of, you know, concern or any other concerns that you're aware of as somebody who's a member
No,
of the dog
I'm not aware of any. I think everyone was really excited about the prospect.
I couldn't think of any myself, but I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah.
Is there any limit as to how much water could be drawn? Is like the people from the community gardens, if they want to water their tomatoes, is there like a limit?
Right, so we were actually concerned about that because the dog park, as you know, is privately funded, and we will be paying for the water, not the town, and the installation costs, et cetera. So the Regional Water Authority, and I can't off the top of my head remember the water flow, they said, look, no one's gonna be pulling up a truck and filling up, you know, a 50-gallon container in 2 seconds and driving back to the gardens. If you need to fill your water bottle or a jug, that's one thing, right? But it's not going to be such a, from what I understand from the Regional Water Authority and other towns, at times there were problems with people literally pulling up and washing their car.
So the outflow volume will be limited by some sort of limiter?
Governor, yeah. Yes, it's not that it'll shut off after X number of gallons, but that the flow.
It would take so long to fill up a large container, is what you're
Exactly.
saying?
Exactly.
I think the gardens have large containers of water for, right? Yeah.
But I think you have to provide that yourself.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
think it's
so they have some kind of-
drawn by a pump from a pond that's behind the firehouse.
I believe that's correct.
Didn't know that. Cool.
Other questions? I did also read that it is the dog park, I'm sorry, is it the Friends of Dog, which is the organization name for
The Woodbridge Dog Park Cooperative.
the cooperative that is paying for the installation, paying for the water. I would just, in case in that winter, when it shuts off in the winter, I would look into whether you have to actually winterize it, clear the water out of the lines. There may be some maintenance
Okay.
The other thing is you'll have to watch out for, it's a public water supply, so the sort of routine testing of its water quality and those sorts of things. Just beware of some of the other regulatory things that may
Gotcha.
come into play. Chris, this is an 8-24, which we get on occasion. Are there things that we do here?
You have to find it in compliance with your town plan of conservation and development.
Okay, so do I hear a motion to find that this proposed water line to our dog park at the Fitzgerald property is in conformance with our town plan of conservation and development?
My motion, make that motion, it's in compliance.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion in front of us? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Congratulations, exciting.
Very exciting, thank you. The dogs, thank you.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
I'm just trying to count to see who's voting.
Oh, yeah, do we have alternates and?
Well, Paul's not here, so you have an alternate that
Okay.
has to. Helen. So you've got Kathy and Sue. You pick your chair.
Are you still an alternate?
Yes.
I need to catch up on. Would you like to vote on this one? Absolutely. Sure. You'll vote on the next one. So we'll alternate our alternates today. Thank you, Chris, for keeping us all up and up and formal according to all the rules. I don't have in my agenda the solar array, but I saw it was in our packet.
Should have been there.
I don't have it on the,
Well, then, if you're not seeing it, then you should vote to add it to the agenda. This is a regular meeting and you can do so.
yeah, did anyone else see it on the agenda?
It's not on the
It's not on
agenda.
the agenda, I read, but the materials were included, I read them, so.
I'll move to add it to the agenda.
I'll second it.
So moved in second, all in favor of adding our proposed monopole solar tracker to our agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Okay, so we have now added it to our agenda. Is there someone here who would like to speak with regards to the solar array?
I don't see anybody here.
Okay,
So this is, just so you know, this is here before you because where they're putting it is in a flood zone. It's considered a structure, even though it's not a house or a building or something like that. So that's why it's here before you. It doesn't require a public hearing, but it does require action by you to go before the Inland Wetlands Agency, and then they did approve it. Part of their approval is that there's gonna be the removal of some invasive species that are down there in the area, including Japanese knotweed and bittersweet and whatnot. This isn't an open field, but the field is a floodplain, so. It's as much as I can tell you, but if you wanna hold on to it, we can get back to it if somebody decides to show up.
so hold it till the end of the meeting, or?
Yeah, you can hold on to it to see if somebody comes, and then we can move on to acting on the regulation, and then we can get to Glenn and.
So other than the wetlands approval, which has already been obtained, and our approval, are there any other administrative hurdles that need to be?
Not administrative ones, then it has to go to, it has to get a zoning permit for the placement of it in terms of location, and then it has to get, regular electrical permit, from the building department.
I'm happy to delay it till the end unless folks,
I don't have a problem with it. I read the application, I looked at it online, I can do that now, or you can move it, when you decide when to act on it, but I don't have a problem with it, so I'll volunteer that. And then, I don't know, are we supposed to vote on it, Mr. Chairman?
I believe we.
You have to, yes.
Understood.
Certainly.
Okay.
So we would vote on it.
You're acting in your capacity as it's under your flood portion of the zoning regulations, so this is the first time, short of repairing a bridge, that I've seen in 22 years that you guys have done anything in a flood zone, although you will have something else coming up shortly.
You said, Chris, that if this does not involve, require a public hearing, so
It does not, it's
by
just a
us
site
adding
plan.
it to the agenda, we can vote on it tonight.
You could vote on it tonight, yeah. I don't think that there's any great shakes with it, it's just procedurally, because of where its location is, it needs to come to you. It's a monopole, it tracks to the sun as the sun is moving. So it's unique that way, and all the wiring will be underground from the base of the pole over to the thing, and then it's secured in the ground by a base, so it's not gonna topple over, let alone flood.
And this is a residence, right? It's a private
Yes.
residence? So this is essentially a moving solar panel that you have on a 19 or 20-foot pole that kind of rotates. It almost would look like, maybe some artistic type thing. And it just rotates with the sun, and I don't know.
It's like a flat,
Panel. Yeah.
panel that moves with
With the
the sun
sun.
during the day.
Yeah, and would provide that particular residence with the electricity that it would need.
It's just like still having solar on your roof, only
Yeah,
it's out in
so
the
it's
field and it
outside.
actually tracks.
So, since we've had that discussion, or at least that sort of education on what this is, should we,
I'll make a motion to approve as submitted.
do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the proposed solar tracker at 283 Seymour Road? I'm seeing none. So all in favor of,
And Sue's voting on this one?
yes, we're alternating our alternates. All in favor of approving in our flood hazard reduction provision function, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So it passes.
Okay.
Thank you. Alrighty. So now we can move to our work session. Correct? And our first item on the work session is the approval of our request from the Agricultural Commission that we've just held a public hearing on and have closed that public hearing. We also, as Chris mentioned earlier, received, and it should be in your packet, the April 19th letter from our Regional Planning Commission where they reviewed the proposed amendment and found that it did not cause any negative intermunicipal impacts to the towns. So I open it up for discussion amongst our commission members. Or actually, should we just, let's do a formal motion and we'll do some discussion in the motion. So, motion to approve the proposed amendment to our zoning regulations to allow for the selling of both products produced on the farm or orchard on which the stand is located, as well as items not produced on said farm or orchard. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Now let's open it up to discussion. I will start that this seems like a very logical addition to and modification that conforms with our neighboring towns.
Good for the town people and for the farm stands, so it's a win-win.
The only question I would have is as to whether the proposed language is too broad,
So,
and whether it should be rephrased to include some sort of limitation that the products sold relate to the nature of the business.
You could insert the word agricultural after the language that says, as well as items, you could say agricultural items. Which kind of came across
I don't
as,
want to be too specific, I
just
mean,
agricultural or something,
yeah,
so.
that was my only question. I don't oppose the.
Can we ask the people that presented?
No, because your
No.
hearing's closed.
yeah, we've already closed our. So if we turn to the big book, this is in the use-specific conditions. It's under section A, agriculture, and it is specifically under farmers markets and roadside stands. So
So the nature of it would be implied that it would be agricultural products being
I
sold.
would think so because it's under that section. That's how I might read that.
I don't feel strongly either way, but I thought that Andrew brought up a good point. But it is in the
But
agriculture.
Is there a concern that, Attorney Skolnick, are you expressing a concern that roadside farms are going to, stands are going to suddenly find
DVDs.
themselves expanding?
I'm expressing no concern other than trying to limit any ambiguity that might be a cause of concern in the future. That's the only reason.
So if you show up at a roadside farm stand that's selling you know-
TVs, for example.
Right, I mean, that's what I'm wondering, is
Yeah.
then you show up there and you start seeing that suddenly it's becoming, over the days and weeks, it's becoming bigger and bigger, and they've gone from selling all their produce and, you know, maybe honey and cookies and stuff that's produced there and, or brought in, and then suddenly there's TVs. Yeah, I mean, wouldn't there be another regulatory authority that would come along and say, hey, what are you guys doing? You're selling TVs in the back parking lot of this farm stand, what's going on? I mean, wouldn't that,
I
you know,
can
or
only
citizen
enforce
would-
what your regulation says.
you can only what?
I can only enforce what your regulation says, and if your regulation doesn't have a limit on what's there, then there's nothing for me to enforce.
Sure.
Well, being in the agricultural section, would
That
you,
doesn't, your regulations are supposed to make it cut and dry so that it's black and white for me to be able to go there and say, yes, you can do this, no, you can't. I'm not open to interpreting what it is that your mindset was when you made this regulation. Can you tell I've been going to Casio classes?
and of course, if you did insert the word agricultural, you could technically sell John Deere tractors as well. You could have a side business. with that. So, I mean, it just gets to the point of, you know, maybe, I don't want to push it too far, but.
I suppose one question we could have asked is whether or not this language looks anything like the language that's in other surrounding towns and communities, but.
You
Maybe,
can't, once your hearing's closed.
Yeah,
that's
no.
it.
You can't ask?
Nope.
But I would think if it does come to the point where it got out of hand, we could come back and amend the regulations to be more specific to farm products.
If,
that we could.
Yeah. So I would, and I think that's a terrific point. I think the language as is in the agricultural section and sort of knowing that the spirit and intent of it, if we're hear from our zoning enforcement officer that suddenly there are TVs and DVDs and other things being sold,
I mean, you have to, not to belabor this whole point, but you have to look at it like, am I supposed to be mindful of the fact that they're now selling TVs and DVDs and all that other stuff, that this is something that I should bring to you? So, I mean, that's where the language thing comes in, which is why when you create a regulation, you have to be mindful of how is it enforced. So if it's something as simple as saying it's a farm stand, it can sell products both produced on that farm stand or another farm stand, and then that precludes it being a tractor or a TV or something like that, then you're allowing things from other farms to come and be sold there, like eggs or honey or
Sure.
whatever it may be.
Seems to me we have the opposite problem in this town right now. It's that
No,
not
I
enough
mean, the
is being.
intent right now is to open it so that you can bring in honey or
Right.
eggs or
Right,
something
right.
else.
We all want to do that.
Exactly.
I think we all want to do that.
But the problem is that people take advantage of stuff, and
Right.
so while I hear that, I think we've been presented some very reasonable language in the agricultural section, and that is a problem that should it arise, I think we can deal with it at another time. That's
so you
my-
just have to go to these farm stands, and if you see something, then you can all come back and say, hey, that's not what we meant.
Sure, we'll hear from the neighbors if it's town.
We'll hear from the neighbors,
Unless they're the ones buying the time.
unless they're buying them, right.
All right, so we've had discussion still on the existing motion with the proposed language that came from the Agricultural Commission. I will put it to a vote. All in favor?
I need you to do two other things. I need you to find it in compliance with your town plan of conservation and
Been
development.
going to.
Because you're adopting a zoning reg, which then hypothetically, because you're a joint commission, should have been, if you were separate commissions, it would have gone to your planning thing. So you being a joint commission, have to find that it's in compliance with your town plan. So there's that part of it, and then you have to establish an effective date. And I have to be able to run a legal notice so that people know that it's been adopted, and I also have to be able to get a copy filed with the town clerk's office before it becomes effective. I am not in the office this week, so please don't establish something this week.
Okay, let's start with the date first, and then is there a date that works better for you?
June 1st be okay, Chris?
June 1st is fine, yeah?
Okay. So I'll have to, do we amend that or,
No, that's just part of your motion.
okay. But do I have to formally amend the motion or no?
I'll accept the amendment.
Yes.
Thank you, Larry.
So second if needed.
Yep.
So
And,
No, Yanni has to accept it.
First, don't you need a motion that it's in compliance with the town?
It's all
plan
part
for
of the
time?
motion.
so, right, so we're gonna continue amending that motion to include that it is in conformance with our town planning and zoning, so Larry, I
Town
think
plan
you.
of conservation
I
and
said that.
development.
Town
Yeah,
plan of
Larry got
conservation development. So Larry has amended the motion, and Yoni has seconded
I
that.
second that.
And an effective date of June 1, which Yoni has seconded as well. So now the motion as twice amended. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
And Kathy's voting.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you all. And thank you to our Agriculture Commission and all the folks who came in. We're really excited actually to come out and see what else you have available at your farm stand, so.
But no TVs.
No TVs.
Thanks, everyone, for coming out tonight.
Now you get to go to Glenn.
Glenn is up next.
Glenn's up next.
Great. So, Mr. Glenn Chalder, we would love to have you come forward and join us at the table, and we'd love to talk about the scope of work in the cleanup and sort of bringing together our zoning regulations into a more cohesive document and more easily sort of usable document, searchable, and the like. So welcome, good to see you again.
It's nice to see all of you in person. So I didn't realize that you hadn't met in person.
In a long time.
That was enough, and then you decided.
Yeah.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you. Chris contacted me first, I think, last year in terms of talking about the regulations and their organization. I experienced it working with you a year or so ago. And pleased to have a chance to sort of try to make it well, or make it right, in terms of the configuration of the regulation. So my goal is to take the separate files on the zoning regulations, put them all together in one document, try to make it fairly clean, user-friendly as much as possible, clear references, some click links and other things in there which will make it much more user-friendly, and to have a set of regulations can be searched both in the Word version and in the PDF version online. There are some anomalies, I guess we'll call them, in some of the tables. Headers are missing and things like that. I'll take care of that. There's some spelling errors and some other things which I'll also sort of take care of. Things which are not policy related. They're just clear misspellings and other errors. So I'll take care of those. The main reason I think for my coming before you tonight is both to talk about the basics of the scope of work, but also ask you some simple questions related to Public Act 2129. I think I will incorporate the most recent change, this evening's change in the zoning regulation. I'll get that into the text for you. But Public Act 2129 contains some language which the commission may or may not want to consider at this point in time. I would think, because we're making maybe scrivener's changes, we'll call them, in the regulations, just by merging the files together. We haven't done anything that really rises to the level that it's an amendment to your regulations. It's really reorganizing, codifying, making more user-friendly. There's nothing of substance which would happen. But if you wanted me to, while I'm in the regulations, we can make changes related to Public Act 2129. You may be familiar with that act. You may have talked about it. There are provisions in there related to the purposes of zoning, certain phrases which shall not be used in the set of zoning regulations, et cetera. And so there are provisions in there, I think, related to minimum floor areas and other things like that, that the statutes have said the zoning purposes, can't do that anymore. So tonight, I'm just seeking guidance from you as to how you would like me to proceed. Just administrative, clean it up, we've got a brand-new set of regulations, no action is required by the commission because it's just cleaned up. On the other hand, if there are things you would want to tackle that are hanging out there, this would be a good time to do it while I've got my fingers into the regulations already.
Questions, reactions from commission members?
So strictly from an administrative review standpoint, would that include identifying any inconsistencies in the current regulations and pointing those out to us? Would it include reviewing the regulations to ensure compliance with existing Connecticut statute?
It's not part of my scope of work, but what I've.
Could it be?
Yes, it could, but what I may have a midterm solution, I guess, is the way I'll describe it. I've been working on the regulations already to really sort of get into the nitty-gritty and understand how they're laid out, how they work, et cetera. There's several things I've noticed in the regulations. And in the page format of the regulations, I have created, I'm gonna call it a sidebar, and I put notes in the sidebar. And these are situations where, for example, many times in the definition section, we have a regulation. So it defines, accessory building as being a building, let's just say for the sake of discussion, or a farm stand that sells a TV. Well, what if the farm stand doesn't sell a TV? Does that still make it a farm stand? No, because it doesn't comply with the definition. So these are sort of some of the challenges, and I'm pointing these out for the commission so that as part of maintenance of the regulations over the long term, you will have this information and you can decide and prioritize which of these you may want to tackle in the future. So just some of the situations, there are definitions, words defined in the regs which are not in the regs. The only time the word appears is in your definition. So there's a definition that's not used. It's sort of like, is that possibly a time bomb? I'm not sure. But to me, it's not good regulatory construction. So as I go through, I'm making note of those things. My scope of work includes tonight's meeting to make sure that we all set the table and understand what our expectations are. I will come back to you with this red line version, I guess I'll call it. But basically the red lines are going to be margin notes. The only thing that you will see redlined in the body of the text is fixing of spelling errors and other things like that. The format of some of the tables are going to change. Right now, your dimensional tables are landscape, and they're not even in the main body of the document.
Yeah.
So I'm in the process of fixing those things. So you'll get a chance to see the regulations as I've created them for your review. And then at that point in time, you can decide when and how to proceed. You can tell me, strip the side, thank you for the sidebar comments, take them out. We'll just go ahead with this new set of regulations, or you know what, while we're doing this, let's start to address those. But that's not part of my scope of work is addressing those, but pointing out to you things that I have identified and scratch my head on a little bit.
And I'll jump in here. Do you believe that many of those sidebar comments would require a formal change, would trigger yes, you need a formal amendment?
I think so. I mean, even if a definition, the words, some of the terms that are defined, if they're not used in the regulations, I mean, I guess you could leave them in, but if you said, you know what, let's get these out of here.
And
that's a
getting
change.
those out of there is not a Scrivener's error anymore.
That is not. In my view, it's not. I think it just for the cleanness and the sanctity of the regulations and their evolution and sections, just to make it very clear for the record that on such and such a date, this was deleted, this was added, that was modified. I think it's really just a good way to go.
And is that a public hearing procedure?
It would be.
Usually.
But again, I think most of what we're talking about here is just trying to improve the user friendliness of the regulations with click links and things like that will allow people to move through the regulations more easily.
Sure.
I think, I found last year as a user of the regulations, calling Chris, I don't know how many times, hang on a second, this is over here and this is over here, but how does that relate to this? And the issue, does it or doesn't? And I think to try to understand that and clean that up for people that You don't need a graduate degree in zoning regulations to be able to figure it out. Would be a great help for people.
I mean, we did have one thing that we found in the course of the hearing last year, which there was a table that was numbered the right table, but it didn't have that information that you were looking for, and that was the number of parking things that went with each thing.
Right.
Which now state statutes have defined that if it's a single bedroom, you can only require one parking space, but if it's two or more, you can only require two parking spaces.
Unless you opt out.
Unless you opt out. So, I mean, the statutes that are out there, that you have provisions to opt in and opt out.
Has
So-
the commission done any of the opt-out discussions yet?
They haven't done any opt out, no.
So I just,
Although we have updated our accessory dwelling unit,
Right. But
Regulations
that had
don't.
an option to opt out too.
correct, which we chose not to
Which
opt
we
out.
didn't do.
On that,
so if I may,
oh, sure.
I would encourage you, if you've adopted your regulations, and they're still not fully in compliance with state law, I think it's cleaner for the commission to opt out but adopt your new regulations. The statutes are set up that if you've not opted out by January 1 of 2023, you cannot opt out from the state's provisions anytime after that. You are stuck with the state regulations. So my advice to you would be either you do the state regulations, you opt out of the state regulations, and just leave your eggs the way that they were, which I don't think is necessarily a great solution, or my advice would be opt out of the state regulations, but adapt your regulations and maybe incorporate many of the things the state suggests. Because I think otherwise by doing that, I'm sorry, just one more
Yeah.
thing, is the January 23rd date. I would encourage you to consider the implications of that if you haven't opted out by that time.
So one thing that got raised in the classes that I've been going to regarding accessory apartments, which people are taking advantage of, is when you leave them in your regs, people who have opted out, or towns that have opted out for the purpose of being able to then make it mandatory or whatever that they can be affordable. So once you opt out, unless you have the language in there to allow them to become named as affordable, you're just allowing them as a normal use. I just bring it up as something that got
Another
brought up.
issue which some communities have also reacted to is that there's actually no provision in the state regulations for owner occupancy of one of the units. So it's essentially a state mandated creation of two families in all zones. And I know we spent quite a bit of time talking about that as part of the application last year, but the issue would again be, I think of those three options, think about which one you think would serve Woodbridge best in the future, and then act accordingly.
I want to actually go back a little bit to the cleanup and harmonization
Yep.
of the document and how it works. That'll include all the things we've done in the last year or so to make sure those are
I believe
fully
so.
integrated.
I believe I asked Chris, what, a couple
Yeah.
weeks, 2 weeks
Yeah.
ago?
He's got all the current amendments that all the sections that, the problem is that right now, the regs aren't in one document. The way it was done back in 2019, they got built into separate little things. And so I've updated, as you've adopted different things, those things, and you've got all of those, so he's gonna make it into one document.
Consistent formatting and everything.
So when you go online to look at the regs, they will be in one PDF that's searchable.
And one Word document, so in the future too, in terms of cross-referencing and changes, et cetera, so.
So like right now, if you make a change and I have to add a page, I have to go into each one of those sections and then renumber it, because they don't start at 1 in each section. They may start at 85 and then only go to whatever. So it's a little bit of a hoop jumping exercise when you update your regs.
So that'll definitely be very valuable.
It's gonna be huge, both for you, for future updates to the regs, as well as for the public, just to have better use of them and understanding of them.
But, and I guess, even, does it include, is there something about even just the basic, I still have my hard copy, which is getting a little dog-eared now.
That's a sign of a good set of regulations, Rob, so good for you.
But, I mean, so even, like, are there things that are just fundamentally challenging about our tables and how they're designed or color-coded or other, I mean, does it get down to this level to that level as well of?
Not, I will be pointing things out in the margins and the sidebar notes for further action. I'll be honest with you, I think it's taken quite a bit of restraint on my part in terms of the way the regulations are organized and configured, and I just think it's not particularly user-friendly in this current format. But I also think zoning regs can be a bit of a rabbit hole that you start to go down, and it can be quite a challenge. So I think the first thing is going to be to get a clean set of regulations with cross-links and everything else, so that you and others will find the regulations much more usable. I think the audit comments in the sidebar will help the commission start to identify some of the things going on, and then you can think about how you might want to prioritize those in the future. I think left to my own devices, if, you know, budget wasn't an issue or whatever, I would want to work with you to move a bunch of pieces around, because I don't think it's particularly intuitive in the way it's laid out. And so the challenge, my background is I used to be a town planner. I worked for real estate development companies for 10 years. My job was to get permits and approvals for things. And then I've been a consultant working with towns for 30-something years, helping them write regulations. The thing you're afraid of in a set of regulations is you miss something important. Millions of dollars can be on the line in a project, and you misread the zoning regs because you didn't know it was in there, or it was hidden in some way, shape, or form. You didn't understand how it applied. And so I think every time somebody has to read the entire book to make sure they didn't miss anything is a lost opportunity. If we can get like things together, so people have confidence, they found what they need, they know what they need to do, it's just kind of a calming influence. So I'd like to get you as far along that road as I can as part of this work, but the bigger structural thing would be something the commission might consider in the future, and I'm happy to share information with some other regs, how they've been laid out, et cetera, and you might decide to stay with what you've got or explore that. But I think this first step is to build a solid foundation to get our regulations in a user-friendly format. I'm excited for that.
But even those types of, you know, here's a example from Fairfield that has a good way that they're approaching their commercial district. That would be in the sidebar sort of note, or not quite that?
I don't think, I guess perhaps the two ways to think about it, proactive and reactive. I'm going through your regs, I'm looking at more reactive in the sidebar and say, whoops, hang on a second here, you know, red alert, alarm bells are going off, maybe this language isn't quite what we would be looking for. But then proactive about where you should go from here, I think is something that would involve more discussion, more consideration for the part of the commission. I could share with Chris some examples, some other regulations around the state, different formats and other stuff like that, and you might consider that. You've kind of got a hybrid set of regulations right now with sort of a form-based kind of component to it versus a use-based component. The provisions are kind of merged. Even the zone name designations aren't really intuitive as to kind of what's going on with those. And so for people to understand it, they kind of throw up their hands a little bit, I think, and say, I don't know what this means. And maybe they have to hire legal help or somebody else for that.
One last question that I want to open up for others. When we get this document, and maybe this is also a question for Chris, that is a public document, the notes and the red line and the comment bubbles, I'm assuming.
I'm not sure if it's in a draft format, if it's a public document.
I think that's perhaps a discussion for the commission. I mean, I don't think there's anything in there that's.
Nor do I, but it would sort of highlight, you know, it'll be a bit of a sort of document with a critique in the margins.
And it would be discussed at a public meeting and all that other stuff. I mean, one of the simple things is currently it's in 2 columns, and as you know, with as many little subsections as you get to, you end up where you have a column that has 3 words in it because it's so far over. So we can reduce, I think, the number of pages just by turning it into.
I thought I could too, Chris, but it's not.
It's
Only
not?
in the sense that
Okay.
I used to work with some of the people at Planometrics, and I always would accuse them of cheating on their margins, right? So the margins on this have been pushed out far, and I'm taking 1.5 inches on each page out for the sidebar notes. So as a result, the number of pages, I think it's up over 160 or 170, up in that range right now, and I'm not quite sure where you're at today. But I've also made the decision that for readability, there are different font sizes you can use, and I've made the decision to kind of go, I think it's with 11 point, I think, which is big. I can go to 10, but this could, I mean, it's a simple click change on the computer, which will change the pagination, so we can make that decision, but smaller fonts can, I mean, some of the tables you've got in your current regs are very difficult to read.
Yeah.
So I think you'd want a set of regulations that are readable, so I'm trying to make it user-friendly in that way.
Because some of the tables that are in there are actually things that were photoshopped in from old regs. So I mean, that's part of the challenge too, is that we just need a clean set to work from.
I mean, because I'm gonna have to work with Chris, because there's even some tables that the headers are missing. The data's in the table, but you don't know what the header says. So we gotta go back to the prior regs to say, okay, we think we know what that
Yeah,
header's
what that
supposed to be.
section is.
But again, try to fix those issues for you.
Other questions, comments from the commission?
How long of a process would this take, do you think?
I don't wanna make my life's work out of it, right?
Next week?
No, I mean, I think I've already started on it. I'm well on my way to addressing this so that I would be able to have a conversation with you this evening. We're on a fixed budget here, so
Sure.
I'm gonna try to do it as expeditiously as I can, but also be diligent about the notes that I'm putting in the sidebars. I would call observations. They're not, I wouldn't call them critiques. These are, again, when we have regulations in a definition, it creates a possible problem in the future. And I think the simplest thing to do might be, even in the use table tonight, we're talking about farm uses, but it's got that use distinction in the use table as opposed to over in the agricultural section. And what might work cleaner is to say agriculture uses in accordance with section 3.2A or whatever it is, 3. Whatever, and it's right there. So when it's not consistent as to where that language is, you start to get confused. So it's just, it's an observation rather than any criticism or any vulnerability for the commission. I would absolutely not want that to happen.
In terms of Act 21-29, isn't there requirements that language be incorporated now in our zoning, like affirmatively furthering fair housing? Isn't there like particular language that has to be now incorporated?
I don't think it rises to that level, but I think if the commission feels that it does, we can certainly include that. So a number of communities have said these regulations are adopted under the authority of Chapter 124 of the general statutes, which includes 8-2. And under the purposes, they've been adopted for the purposes in 8-2 or Chapter 124, including but not limited to the following. Because there's a whole bunch of shalls and shall nots.
Okay, so that's not a requirement.
I don't believe it's a requirement
I thought it was.
to literally include all of that phraseology. It shall, there's 3 major sections to that section of Public Act 2129. Regulations shall do this, may do this, and shall not do that. So I think the shall nots need to be taken out. I think the shalls need to be reflected in the regulations. I don't think we have to list them all. And the mays are voluntary on the part of the commission. So it's up to you. I'm going to go ahead and change what you've got. I would perhaps suggest a general reference to Chapter 124. And if the commission says, no, we want it verbatim, I'll make it verbatim.
So as far as the opting out by the January 1, 2023, that's regarding this whole change that was made regarding accessory dwelling apartments, right? And so the purpose, if you just go through that again, you explained it very clearly, but I was sort of mentally lagging from a long day at work.
Yep.
That if we vote by 2/3 vote to opt out of the applicability of those changes that the legislature passed, then what that does is that builds us in more time. Is that the idea in
I think
opting out?
It creates a separation. Public Act 2129 has 3 opt-out provisions within it. One is for temporary healthcare structures. That was an opt-out option, I think, in 2018, but it's back. with some modified language. So some communities are choosing to opt out again. I don't think you need to, but you should take a look at that and decide what you want to do. And that is section, bear with me for a second here.
Temporary healthcare facilities, is that what you said?
Temporary healthcare structures was section 3 of Public Act 2129. The next opt-out provision is the quickest one, I guess, is parking. And that's section 5 of Public Act 2129. And as Chris indicated, that you are prohibited from requiring more than one parking space for a studio or one-bedroom unit unless you opt out. So some communities have said, well, even a one-bedroom unit might have a couple in it, each with 2 cars. So maybe the average isn't 1 space per unit, it might be 1.5, or some other situation, or not in a transit-oriented circumstance. So they're saying, we understand where you're going, and we're okay with it, but maybe 1 space isn't quite right for us. So again, if you're not going to go with the state's standard, you should opt out. And the third one is the accessory dwelling unit. And this is again where the state has essentially established the standards, which certain things that allows you to do or prohibits you from doing. And that went into effect on January 1. And if you haven't opted out by January 1 of 2023, then you cannot opt out again in the future.
So are you going to tell us whether or not our current, the one that we did adopt, is already in conformance with that? That was recently adopted of that section regarding EDUs? Are you gonna tell us that, or maybe Chris could already answer that question?
I can't answer it right off the top of my head.
What section is the accessory?
Section 6 of Public
Section
Act
6,
2129. So I think, did this get sent to the commission, Chris?
I didn't get it. I don't think.
Really? I thought I sent 2 things.
Yeah, I looked for something. No,
No, this and this? No?
no.
Okay, so,
I'll forward them to them.
yeah, if you would.
Yeah.
So I prepared 2 things for the commission. Just, one was just a quick 1-page summary of the scope of work, and we've already talked about that, so that's not gonna help you much. But the other thing was a summary of Public Act 2129, and it's basically broken into 3 sections. The first of which is this concept of modifying zoning purposes, which was to your question, Kathleen, and possible approaches for that. The next section was the opt-out provisions, all 3 of them, and those were described in here with the statutory language, and some of the language was highlighted for you to evaluate and consider. And then the third, section 3 was what's called the Fees Ordinance, which is, do you have a Fees Ordinance in place?
Yes.
Okay. Fees Ordinance allows you to charge the applicant for the cost of professional review services if you choose to. And then section 4.
We already have that.
There's some new provisions in there,
Okay,
though. It doesn't
well-
allow you to charge more for an affordable housing development, blah, 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 so I know. And then the last section is that there are other elements of Public Act 2129 that don't result in changes to the zoning regulations, so to provide a thorough review or analysis, it's in here, but you don't have to do anything, I don't believe, to respond to that. So you may want to just take a look at this, and through Chris, you can communicate back to me in terms of any other issues, or even just queue it up so the next time I do come back, say, Glenn, we're gonna wanna talk in more detail about accessory dwelling units and do our regulations comply. I think I can figure that out pretty quick.
Is that gonna be sent out to us, your summary?
Yeah, I think I sent it to Chris, but it may have got.
Sometimes things end up in another folder.
Did I end up in your spam folder?
You may have ended up in my spam folder. I'm sorry.
After all these years.
It goes into this Barracuda thing.
I understand. If for whatever reason you didn't get these 2 items, I think they're both attached to an email. Just let me know.
Okay.
They're two.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing them because I was looking for them because you said you were gonna send
And,
something.
So-
and just so I'm clear, if we do, so our scope of work is only the cleanup and the
Observation.
observations of places for potential further action that require a formal hearing and change of our regulations, and or other things, observations that we should be focused on.
Yeah, I think my sense right now is, I'll have more information when I come back to visit with you, but my sense right now is I feel my scope of work involves cleaning up spelling and other errors. but not any policy or substantive changes. Those would end up in the sidebar observations for you then to discuss, because I wouldn't want to make any decision on your behalf.
But those will also observe places where we have things that aren't speaking to one another in our regulations, or things that are inconsistent, or the definition of a word that is never used.
Yeah, well,
It would be
as I
those
have
sorts of things.
observed those things, I've made the notes in the sidebar for that purpose.
Does opting out of section 3, 5, or 6 of Connecticut General Statutes 21-29 require notice of a public hearing for that vote?
I would believe that those should. I think the statute, the requirements for opting out are identified in the statute. It requires a 2/3 vote of this commission, I believe, following a public hearing. It also requires a 2/3 vote from the Board of Selectmen. So, and just keep in the back of your mind that the parking in the temporary healthcare structures, I think you can opt out at any time in the future. But the one on accessory dwelling units, if you're going to opt out, I would suggest you do that before the end of the year, because come January 1, that that ship has sailed.
Right.
But I guess on that one is where maybe there's some confusion, because I thought we've just changed our ADU requirements to conform to the state statutes.
Do they conform?
Right, but one of the requirements was you cannot make the unit affordable, and I think that's where people decided to opt out. You can't make it mandatory that an ADU dwelling unit is affordable.
State statute prohibits you from requiring a unit to be affordable. State statutes prohibit you from requiring an access way between the two units so that the accessory unit can be reintegrated back into the house later. It essentially requires some sort of fire code separation between the two units, which essentially makes it a two-family. And some communities just say, we don't want to do that. So there's perhaps a laundry list of issues why communities might have chosen to opt out, but I think the choices that you really come down to is you either have to accept the state's mandatory override, which is in effect now, unless you've opted out and gone in a different direction. So I think that's the delicate issue. I have to preface it, I'm not an attorney, I know you have several on the board, I also have a town attorney, so the question is, perhaps a legal one to the town attorney, hey, what's your read here on Public Act 2129? Because I read it saying that as of January 1 of this year, the state says this is what you can and can't do with an accessory dwelling, unless the town opts out.
And I guess what I'm trying to say is I think that question for us has been asked and answered. We've
Right.
passed a new accessory dwelling unit set of rules.
But that's your guidance to me. Then
Right, and what I presume is that in addition to the cleaning up, in the observations, when you get to that section on what we did pass on accessory dwelling units, you might make the observation to say, just so you know, but if that's not in the scope of what we're discussing you to do.
I want to
you
try to
know.
provide good advice and service to the commission. I'm gonna-
Right.
Rob's communication here, which is that we've talked that through, we believe that
Right.
by making the changes, we've done what we need to do. I'm not gonna challenge that, so I will accept that. If it goes through the regulations and there are things that come up in the observations section, I may throw those back for your consideration at some time in the future.
Sure.
But I think Rob's given me guidance here, and I'll take it on Commissioner Beta.
Other questions? Anything else we need to do, Chris?
He's just here to kind of update you and.
So, and when will you come back?
I'm working on it now, so I think it could be, we'll talk to Chris and figure it out. How often does the commission meet? Once a month?
Once a month.
Once a month. Their June meeting, there should be an application, just to give you a clue where you're at. Your June meeting, there should be an application coming in for Toll Brothers, so just getting you ready for that. And if wetlands is acted by there, you'll also be having an application come in for a 14-lot subdivision on, off of Merritt Avenue. So, you're gonna have a busy summer and fall.
We're not under any statutory time frame or anything else like that. I would like for the commission to have at least 2 weeks to review the material before we get together. It's a set of zoning regulations, so no matter how user-friendly I make it, it's still got the basic DNA of your regs today. And so you may find it hopefully more readable, more usable, but you're still gonna have to kind of digest the sidebar comments for our next meeting to be productive. So I think the scope of work includes 2 or 3 meetings. Tonight's meeting is the first. The next one is when I come back with the reorganized regulations with the observational comments. And if you decide you want to move ahead with, I think, adoption of that, which I don't think you need to do, I think I included that meeting as well. So I think there's 3 meetings in there. So I'll work with you and we'll figure out how to make that work.
Perfect. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Really good to see you.
Nice to see you as well. Enjoy.
Why don't you just resend it to me?
I will do that.
That would make life easier.
Yes, absolutely. I'll do it right here, right?
Okay. And if I don't see it when I get back downstairs, I'll send you an email and say, hey, I didn't see it.
All right, next up on our agenda is a discussion of our zoning regulations regarding recreational cannabis retailers and the forum on cannabis on Tuesday, May 10th, 2022, which is only
Next week.
It's next week.
So I think we had tabled our discussion until that forum. Isn't that what we decided?
Well, it's there because we have to discuss your form. So I've contacted one of the co-chairmen of the Connecticut Bar Association's Committee on Cannabis, and so he's gonna come on the 10th. I can have this room and just have a smaller presentation here with whoever from the public shows up, and then whoever presumably can tape it for you. And then that way it can get put up on the website so people can see it. What you had talked about the last time you met was having that informational session so that everybody could become familiar, because it's a big section of regs on it. And then after that, you would do a simple survey going out probably in June, when people are still around, just asking a generic question: do you want to have the sale of cannabis in town or not? Because previously, when we had a tattoo parlor that came and when we had a gun shop that came, everybody came out. So, I think it's wise for you to get some sort of sense from both the business community, the schools, and everybody else, where does the town want to go with this? And then after you had that, then you talked about either, depending on what your response back was from that, you have the option of establishing a moratorium so you can consider it more. There are draft regs, as Andrew had mentioned, some towns have just outright banned it. Some towns have said, nope, we're gonna regulate it and sell it, and some towns have opted to create a moratorium to allow you more time on doing something. There have been any number of people who have inquired about whether or not you're gonna allow the sale of recreational cannabis in town and/or marijuana medical dispensaries. Now, part of it, as far as I understand it, is that the state has to say that you're gonna be able to have one, because it's ultimately the state that says where they can go based on the population that they feel they need to serve. And I think at your last meeting, one of the things that you discussed was the fact that if you don't address any regulations, then we just treat it as a retail store. There's no separation distances from a church or from a school or from whatever, and it can be anywhere that you allow retail use. But, my simple question at this point is it okay with you just to have him come here in this room rather than going to the JCC and setting up a big room, as long as we can tape it and have it available for the public to be able to see, so that they can become, informed also?
Are there going to be this few
As
Of
far as I
chairs?
know, right now, the spacing is what you see.
By what authority, I mean, or what command?
We're being told that through the Board of Selectmen. This is how they run stuff.
With this type of seating and spacing.
I can double check and see if there can be more seating. I honestly don't know, how much. I mean, the other thing, side of the coin is that we really haven't done any publicity on this. So it's gonna be, something going out to boards and commissions saying, hey, you can tune in and watch this thing. It's gonna get posted on the website, and then, that kind of a thing.
It's not gonna be live streamed, correct? It's just gonna be posted like the rest of our
That's
boards and commission
cool.
type stuff.
Normally,
You can just sit there and talk.
I would, if people are interested, it would be live streamed as well as televised. If there's some reason you don't want it to be live, I'll talk about it with my commission.
I don't see any reason not to have it live.
Yeah, I mean, there
I
isn't
agree.
any, people enjoy watching, for whatever reason, all the boards and commissions in this town.
Or whatever.
There's no commercials.
Maybe they have trouble falling asleep.
Did we want the purpose of the forum to be to give information or to hear comment from the public? Because if it's to hear comment from the public and we limit the number of people who can be here, that could be a
It
problem.
was an educational
If it's
thing.
Educational, then
Yeah.
it's
It was
educational.
for you to learn as well as for members of the public to come and learn. Which is why if it's recorded, people can watch it and learn about it and then form an opinion. And then if you hold a survey, then they'd be more informed to be able to, answer that survey.
So it's more of a one-way directional situation, right? I mean, so in that sense, I guess it could be here or anywhere. But I would put it on live, and I would put it here, people can show up. But there's not a lot of people that can fit in this room, but I would do it live and recorded, and then we can tell people that it's out there, and we can go and watch it.
Yeah, I mean, when we did the housing opportunity study stuff, I have access through other people that work here. We can send out stuff to members of the boards of both schools and the police and everybody else so that they can watch it and can become informed. And then if they choose to come to be able to ask a question, then they can. At the moment, we just don't have the availability to do a hybrid.
But I'm not sure we're actually gonna have are we really gonna have a Q&A session at this information?
I think he's open to answering questions if you have questions, yeah.
But is it questions from our commission? Questions from members of the Board of Selectmen who decide to come?
That's what
Is
you
it-
guys
yeah.
have to tell me. I've lined up somebody who can come, and he can,
Has the Board of Selectmen, or any other, town commission had a meeting in this room before us where there has been insufficient seating as currently laid out?
the bigger Board of Selectmen meetings have been held in an open bays of the firehouse where people were chilly. And I know that even when we did the booster shots for COVID over in the auditorium, that as you were waiting after you had a shot, they had us spaced out. So that I think the only place that they were really comfortable having something was in the firehouse where they could open the doors and have air movement going through. That being said, the Housing Opportunity Study Committee had a forum at the JCC in their larger auditorium. I would have to re-verify with Scott Cohen whether or not that's available at this late of a date to ask.
Yeah, I mean, you're only talking
8 days.
8 days.
Yeah. I mean, when we did the forums for the Housing Study Committee, they invested in signs so that we put them up on the A-frames. We, had flyers that were out there. People went to recycling and were handing out flyers just to let people know. So, I mean, we haven't had that big of a publicity push. But if you look at it more as an informational discussion with him where the public is invited to watch, you're gonna ask questions, it will be recorded for the public to then watch and listen and learn from.
And as a special meeting, there's no requirement of public notice for the special meeting?
I have to notice it, yeah. There's a quorum of you, I have to post it as a meeting, yeah.
But that's not been done yet.
I haven't done it yet, because I'm waiting to hear from you guys what you want to do.
But we have time.
Yeah. And I have confirmed that this room is usable.
So it sounds like this is gonna be an education session for us, which we do need, I think.
I do.
On this
Yeah, I do.
topic.
I don't know a lot about this topic.
And, which is fine, which will then be publicly noticed as we always do. We will share it a little more widely and aggressively than we would normally do a meeting of ours by actively telling the other boards and commissions, we are doing this on this date, please tune in.
Yeah, and
For
we
the-
can have a blurb put in the, not to cut you off, but a blurb put in the town newsletter and whatnot, and when Beth sends out her mass email saying that this, the meeting, the informational meeting that you had with a co-chair of the cannabis committee, is available for the public to view and learn more about cannabis regulations in the state of Connecticut. And if you want to do it that way, then that's all the way we publish it, is that it's a special meeting where you're going to come here, have a presentation by him, it will be recorded, and then you're not specifically saying it's a public forum where you're inviting the public to come and either comment or ask questions.
So like the Board of Selectmen, they're not gonna be part of this informational session, it's just gonna be
No.
our.
Right now, no, because it's
But wouldn't
you're-
they be interested in listening to this as well?
just as much as anybody else who's got an interest in it. You're the ones that would adopt regulations regarding the sale of it. So it's in your court to work on regulations. It can impact various different things. It can impact school boards. It can impact the police department. It can impact fire department. There's a lot of people that it can impact. Economic and Development Commission. So, there's lots of stakeholders that may want to learn about it. But at this stage of the game, the short question is, how are we operating this?
I think there's a distinction to be made between us being educated about the appropriate issues and then holding a public hearing where we debate adopting a regulation.
Well, you wouldn't hold a public hearing yet. You're still trying,
I'm not saying at the
Yeah.
same time. I'm saying
Oh,
it's two
no.
different things. The distinction is what I'm pointing out.
yeah,
So
but
I don't know that we need, my point being, I don't need that we know that we need a bigger room than this for purposes of
Right.
this
If-
lawyer speaking to us.
yeah, if you limit it to an educational meeting for you to have someone come and discuss with you what the state statutes are regarding cannabis, then you have that discussion, it's taped, and it's available, and we can put that notice out there that that meeting is available for the public and any interested boards and commissions to look at.
And to the extent, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say that to the extent that, after the May 10th, in this room, live streamed or not, whatever, it's out there, and then we start saying, hey, just take the time to watch that. If you have questions after that, then those are questions that maybe the community will choose to debate further. But, like you said, our job is eventually to, promulgate and adopt a regulation regarding this. But, the purpose of this is to help educate us as a
To
commission.
begin with,
So
yeah.
if folks, in the general public, like I'm thinking of your reference to the tattoo parlor and the gun shop, and I think there's just like every other sort of medium to hot button issue, when you change something in the community, people say, hey, wait a second, I didn't even know this was going on, and then they have to educate themselves, and that takes a few months, and we won't be doing something in the next couple of months. We have months of time, so I'm not that concerned. I
Yeah.
think what you're proposing here makes a lot of sense. Just
So,
keep this
we
room.
had talked at the last meeting about maybe doing a survey in June. We have the survey program that the Housing Study Committee brought, which is currently being used by the Diversity Committee, I think, to do a survey. So that's available to us. You always have that option to establish a moratorium while you're gathering information to know where you want to go. So there's no push that, you have to get a reg, but you have to be mindful of the fact that you need to do something, whether it's have a moratorium or ban it or say it's fine and have regs to govern it. We've got to be mindful of that time frame.
And Andrew, back to something you said earlier, though, there is still this question of in between, and I do actually like us getting educated because we need that initially. Have you recorded and live stream, I'm fine as well, so it's available to anyone else to tune in and get educated alongside of us. And it'll be then a permanent sort of fixture that people can refer to. If we then there's that eventual question on a public hearing around anything we choose. I'm sure we're going to learn what are our major options: moratorium, banning it, regulating it. All that would require a public hearing. Any three?
Well, you would be either be having a moratorium to establish a moratorium, you would be either having a public hearing to establish a moratorium, or you would be having a public hearing to adopt regulations which either banned or regulated,
right.
that whatever. And in between that step, you may or may not want to try to have another more open public forum where members of the public could come and talk
That
as a second kind of a
Right.
forum.
and that's where I was going. That might be a compliment, like after a survey or
Or
in
before
conjunction
a
with the
survey, so that people are a little bit more informed when they answer the survey.
Chris, and procedurally, on Tuesday, May 10th, you would need a quorum? Do you need a quorum of TPC members here? So,
If it's going to be a special meeting, I would hope you would come.
very good, very good.
I mean,
I'm
I
sure.
did
just
mention this
wanted-
date to you about a
Yes,
month
it's a
ago
month.
or 2 months ago.
All right.
when
I'm
I
just
got
making
it.
sure we'll get the people.
I mean, I don't want him coming down here and
then
I'm the
there's
only
not a
person
quorum,
here.
right.
I mean,
Well-
Was it 6:30 again, or some different time? I don't recall.
I think I said 7, because I wasn't sure at that point if the public was going to be invited, and I didn't want to do a 6:30 because,
So it's at 7 o'clock. Okay.
so we'll,
Well, I'll come if Larry does.
Wait, so it sounds like,
I'm just checking.
You know my attendance system.
Chris, it sounds like that, yes, a special meeting, education for us, our ability to ask questions
and then we'll get it up on the website.
and live stream real time as well. Is that hard to do in this room?
It's just
This is the only room we can do it
from,
right now.
and if there's nothing else going on next Tuesday,
Actually, this is
is there anything going on?
resigning.
No? So you may be the thing to watch next Tuesday night.
And did the guest have, if they had a PowerPoint or presentation, does that cause things?
So we have a screen and we have a projector.
But it also would be viewable from,
She's very skilled at doing this, yes.
okay.
That's why she does that and I don't.
So I think is that enough
That's a plan.
guidance? Okay.
That's fantastic.
Everyone agree with the plan?
Sure.
I see nods around the
Yeah.
table.
Yes.
Okay. We are
And then-
definitely, we're walking before we're running here.
Okay, and then what I'll do, just so you know, is that your regular meeting in June, I'll just put it on there as a placeholder on your agenda, so then you can come back to that meeting after you've digested whatever happened next Tuesday and have a discussion and decide
About
where
the
you wanna
next
go
step.
from there.
Thank you.
So, but you said 7, not 6:30.
7. So I'm pretty sure that's what I told
Yeah,
him.
that is what I was just looking back.
I happened to see him do a presentation, there was something that he gave the presentation on, and
How
it
was
was
it?
really good. And he does have a PowerPoint.
Thought you might. Okay.
Good.
So moving on and wanting to get us out the door, any reports from our Southern Connecticut Regional Council of Governments?
No, because I was away and wasn't able to make the last meeting, so, other than the report that related to Woodbridge with regard to the farm stands, was it?
Yep.
I have nothing further to report.
Thank you, very efficient. Chris, as zoning enforcement officer, anything you'd like to share with us?
The only thing I wanted to tell you is that you, as far as I know, Toll's been in contact with me. They're having engineers work on their plans. They're hoping to have an application into here for your regular meeting on whatever the first meeting in June is. And they may be asking you to have a special meeting to help process that thing. They are gonna be submitting a fresh application. They're not gonna be seeking to amend the prior application that was approved, because there's just too much stuff that's different, and they're running into timeframes where it's getting close to the end and all that other good stuff. They would be submitting to wetlands at the same time or before. Wetlands would be meeting mid-June, and whatnot, so, we're gonna go from there.
When you say, they might request a special meeting before
You don't normally meet in August, so if they submit to you in June, they may ask you, rather than waiting, because then your next meeting would be July, they may ask you, would you hold a special meeting either towards the end of July or beginning of August to act on their application?
That's what I was asking. I wasn't sure whether you were suggesting there would be 2 special meetings.
In May?
In May.
No, because
I
they're
was
not gonna
against that.
submit to you until, till June. It's just that they're trying to, they'd like to get shovels in the ground if they could sometime in the
Gotcha.
fall. And then the other application that will be coming at you is the subdivision that's, down on Merritt Avenue. It is in a floodplain, so there'll be at least 2 applications that you'll see. One is gonna be for the floodplain stuff again, and then the other one will be for the subdivision. There's a lot of public interest in that one. One of the main things that the people, and they'll talk for themselves, but we've heard it through the wetlands thing, is parking. And that's why, in a sense, I mentioned to you about this statute that says, if it's a 1-bedroom thing, it's 1 parking space. If it's a 2-bedroom, it's a max of 2, because there was a house that was taken down, 2 duplexes were put up on that one, it was split into 2 lots, so there were 4 dwelling units that were put up where there had been 1. There's only 2 parking spaces on each lot, and they apparently have some small motor homes which are not being kept on the property where I could chase them, so they're keeping them out in the road, and that's causing, I'm hearing parking issues about that. I can't chase them, it's in the road. Police can't chase them because it's a parking area, so, there's a concern about the people who live down there about parking. I did mention this to the subdivider and said, gee, could you try creating, a place where there could be some overflow parking for the subdivision, because it is a lollipop, it's a little dead end. No, not interested in doing any affordable housing there. They're not mandated to, because it's just a simple subdivision which would be zoning compliant with duplexes on each lot. Currently, the ones that they built are going for $2,750 a pop. Rent a month, so, but that's coming in. That's all I got.
Real quick, you said earlier something about when we were speaking about accessory dwelling units, you said folks are taking advantage.
We've seen a number of different people who've been coming in under that. It's an interesting sometimes it's the parent who's gonna move out, and the children are gonna move in, and then they're gonna build a smaller unit where they're gonna live. Sometimes they're anticipating that they may have some health issues, so that it'll be all on one floor rather than, up-down kind of thing. So I think there's probably 3 or 4 that we've seen since October that are like that. And I've had discussions with more people about doing it. So it's obviously an option that people are willing to take advantage of. The only thing that we did want to, mention to you is that the way it's currently written in the regulations, you can't require that it be an affordable housing thing. So, but it is something that's creating
Opportunity housing.
an alternative form of housing for people in town. And, all the forms of housing don't have to be affordable. They can just be allowing people to age in place by having that accessory unit, or having children come back who just couldn't afford to move out on their own. So, to me, it's a very positive thing to see that's getting done. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, and it'd be nice to kind of hear those sorts of updates as they come in.
Yeah,
it's
and
helpful for us
as
to
I
hear.
say, it's an interesting thing, because I've seen it where the kids are coming back, and I've seen it where the parents are thinking of staying here in town and being mindful of, their own growing limitations in terms of mobility and whatnot. So it's, it's refreshing to see it being a positive thing that's being done.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can I ask one last thing? And that's that I heard folks have asked about the brewery, that I've heard people tell me that the brewery is going to remain, and they're going to, they're going to West Haven, they're going to build their primary thing in West Haven, that they're given that land or sold that
We
land.
haven't
Do
heard.
you know?
We had heard that they were gonna keep this open as a brew pub kind of a thing, but we haven't heard anything. And
Just curious.
so it's interesting. Would've been nice if they stayed.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Thank you, Chris, and thank you as well for all the work you're doing every day that we don't get to see and experience, but it is appreciated. Any other business before we approve minutes?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, so then we have a long list of minutes for approval.
I'll move that we approve the minutes in the following order, beginning with the regular meeting of January 4, 2021. Anybody second?
Second.
Should we do them one at a time?
I can do them all at once if you want.
Well, actually, I do have a
Yeah.
correction. July,
We'll do them one at a time. So what's been moved and seconded is the meeting minutes from January 4th, 2021. Any discussion or comments on that meeting minutes? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed and abstentions?
well, I wasn't present.
Okay. So Chris, you have that?
So secondly,
Thank you.
I'll move that we approve the minutes from the regular meeting of July 6, 2021.
Can I have a second?
Actually, I had a
You have
correction.
to move it before you
Gotta,
make
gotta,
it.
gotta be a,
Oh, okay.
okay, now you can say.
So it's been moved and seconded by,
Larry.
Andrew moved and seconded by
Larry,
Larry. Any discussion or changes, edits?
Yes, I had made a motion at that meeting, and this was not the motion reflected in the minutes. As I recall, the motion had to do with aligning our accessory dwelling units with the recently passed state regulations. And that isn't really reflected in this motion.
So you're looking at page 2, when you moved to, it's currently is removed to schedule a public hearing on zoning amendments?
Right, I didn't talk about scheduling a public hearing. I talked about aligning the Woodbridge's zoning regulations to align with the recently passed state regulations.
this was the motion to schedule the hearing, which you had to make. So what you did in that meeting was to amend it so that you were gonna allow the housing opportunities to increase. That was the change in the regulation, the GBA zone, and then the size of the accessory dwelling units I can insert there. That was to comply with the statutory requirements.
Right, I think the concern I had was there was no reference to the fact that the regulations, Woodbridge's regulations would be aligned with the state regulations, and that's what I wanted to make sure was reflected in there.
Right, so I think we can add that in
You-
that second clause, and that the,
Wait a minute, you had two different things that you did. The first one that you did was this one where you changed, because you had, this one was the meeting where you had just adopted the stuff based on Orchard Road. And at that point, you couldn't have done the thing for GBA, and you couldn't have done the thing for expanding into accessory dwelling units, because that wasn't something that was asked for by Two Orchard. You then went and did a subsequent change that was adopted effective October 1st.
I'm just going by what I said at the meeting, the motion I made.
So I can go back and listen to it? I'm
Right.
just saying, you had two different hearings.
So I'll amend my motion to table the approval of the July 6th.
If you want, I just go back and, whatever she said, I can
Yeah.
listen to the tape, because
Right.
I want to get these done.
Right, right.
I'll amend my motion to authorize Ms. Sullivan to go back and listen to the tape and change as necessary the motion that was made on that date by Commissioner Hunter.
In particular, to reflect the conformance with
Well,
the state
in
statute.
particular, to reflect whatever it
Whatever
is that the tape
The
says.
motion, the tape
Okay.
shows, yeah.
Okay. So as amended, any further comments on the July 6th regular meeting minutes? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye as amended.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention? Larry abstains.
I abstain, but Kathy was.
Okay.
So next, I move to approve the minutes of the special meeting of August 23, 2021. That's it, that's my motion.
I'll second it. Any moved and second, any discussion on the special meeting of August 23rd, minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of approving, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Thank you. So August 23rd, 2021 is approved.
The next one is I move to approve the minutes of the special meeting of September 9th, 2021.
Oh, you go ahead, Larry, second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the minutes of August 30th, 2021?
Yeah, there was an August 30th one, too.
Oh,
Did you skip those?
That was, I kept screwing up with stuff, I'm sorry. You should have had it.
no,
Be careful with the microphone, please.
I apologize.
I don't know
I
where
do
they
not
were.
have an August
I
30th.
don't know.
I didn't give it to you, I'm sorry.
Oh. So
I
we will,
gave it to you 2 months ago, but not again.
So I don't make
Okay.
any motion with respect to August 30th.
so the motion was only on September 9th.
Yes.
So we will get back to August 30th next time. So the motion and seconded on September 9th. Any discussion on the September 9th special meeting minutes? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Abstaining, so there on that one.
I'm abstaining.
And 2 abstentions. Thank you. So we're good with September 9th.
I move to approve the minutes of the special meeting of October 25, 2021.
I will second it. Moved and second. Any discussions on the minutes of the special meeting of October 25? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
By the way, August 30th was the meeting where we couldn't start because the WebEx wasn't starting. I actually brought it with me,
Okay,
just so you know.
you get kudo points for
I do.
Any opposed, any abstention on the October 25th?
Abstain.
Abstain.
I move that we approve the minutes of the regular meeting of December 6, 2021.
I'll sec, sorry.
Whatever.
Go ahead, Larry. Larry is seconding.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the December 6, 2021 regular meeting minutes? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The December 6, 2021 is approved.
I move that we approve the minutes of the special meeting of February 17, 2022.
I will second it. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the February 17th minutes?
I'm pretty sure I was in attendance for that meeting because it was,
It was the joint
I
meeting.
just didn't meet,
maybe because I was representing the housing.
no, you should have been here too.
Okay.
Okay, so,
I'll amend my motion to include the indication that Commissioner Hunter was here in her capacity as a member of this commission as well.
and I second that amendment. So moved and seconded. Any further discussion or edits? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Larry abstains.
I move that we approve the minutes of the special meeting of February 28, 2022.
I will second it. They've been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the special meeting minutes of February 28th, 2022?
I'm here as both alternate and excused, so.
Okay, I was trying to make up for lost time.
I'll amend my motion to reflect that change.
Well, which one were you?
I don't think I was there.
So we will delete Susan Cassidy as alternate and keep her in the excused. And I second that amendment. Any further discussion on the motion to approve the minutes as amended? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained?
Abstain.
Larry and Susan have abstained.
And lastly, I will move that we approve the minutes from the regular meeting of March 7, 2022.
I will second it. Moved and seconded the minutes of March 7th, 2022. Any discussion, comments, or edits?
I was still.
So reflecting.
Seeing none, all in favor of approving these minutes of March 7th, 2022, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed and any abstentions?
Abstain.
Terrific. Thank you, Andrew.
And, Mr. Chairman, I have no further minutes with respect to which to move anything.
You've done a good job of moving all those minutes, and Chris, we've gotten real close, just that one pager from August 30th,
Yeah,
2021.
I'll get that one out to you.
We'll share next time. Any further items for the good of the order or the commission? Seeing none, motion to adjourn. Seconded by Yoni. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
None are opposed, no abstentions. Thank you all. Good to see you all in person. And yeah, be well. And